By the way, all of this is obviously just assuming an audience of people who are going to college. I know most of the people on my channel aren't going to college, but some of you are. And for those of you who are, I don't think that college is necessary for success in life. I don't think it's necessary to be smart. I don't think it's necessary for anything. But at the same time, I mean, unless it's like a career specific thing, or unless you want to spend a lot of time sitting with people who've mastered this or that topic, like in that case, then yeah, it's necessary. But if you've got like parents who want you to do it and they're going to pay for it, or if you are willing to take that debt on for yourself, or whatever, if you're already going to be doing it anyway, then I think that you should probably make the most out of it. That's what I'm saying. All right, I think I just want to jump right into this. So I've been working all day and wanted to take a break so that I could just like talk to you about something that I really enjoyed doing when I was at the university, when I was an undergraduate, actually in my like first year. I saw on the wall, like they were hiring at student government positions for event coordinators. And I was looking for some extra money. And so I responded to it without thinking much of it. But then what that involved was getting a lot of training in event organizing. And the long and short of it is, it's not actually that complicated. And through that position, I ended up like bringing a comedian and organizing a game night and just doing some things like that. But I was also, I had like a Wine Wednesdays philosophy club group that became an official club eventually, just so that we could get money from the school so that we could start bringing speakers who we liked on YouTube. And so that was really the start of something that evolved, because when I went on for my bachelor's to a different place, I was like, well, I'm going to take advantage of every one of these sorts of resources that they have at the university, so that I can keep doing that. But as I was getting more politicized, I was doing my 2016 Bernie activism and stuff like that. I was like, I want to like do something. Like I was like already in kind of like a philosophy theory, a couple of philosophy theory type groups that I'd started with a couple of friends. And so well, one thing that I ended up doing was bringing someone like Jason J. Campbell, or Garrett Merriam, who's Jason J. Campbell, or is it Jason C. Campbell? Hold on. You can actually see right here, Jason J. Campbell. It's Jason J. Campbell. This is Garrett Merriam. Sisyphus Redeemed is actually the tag on YouTube. Also brought Richard Wolff, Douglas Lane from Zero Books, Ben Burgess, Dangerous Maybe, my friend Michael Downs. Oh, these are all men, please. Yeah, these are, but that was no fault of my own. The purpose of this video is to inspire anybody who might be going to college anytime soon to take advantage of the resources that are available there, so that you can bring people who you are interested in learning from or exposing others to. Okay, so there might be a lot of different kinds of reasons that you would want to do that. One would be to radicalize people, to like introduce them to ideas that are outside of their comfort zone, or to just to kind of get a conversation going that is kind of, you know, beyond what you could do with the people that are around you already. So, I mean, whatever kinds of friend group, or clubs you might be involved with once you start going to school, you're going to, I mean, look, most people are really busy. A lot of people don't really know what they want to think about or talk about, like exactly, like, you might be studying like philosophy and people are kind of just like, I'm kind of interested in this and I'm kind of interested in that. Well, it's really good to bring somebody who's not just one of the professors that's already there that people are already kind of like aware of, but to instead bring someone who's like really, really passionate, but also from outside of the state. It's a good way to sort of mix things up. And for me personally, I find it really helpful to meet people who I'm like, I wouldn't say I'm idolizing, but there's always a sort of parasocial primary identification that is occurring with anybody who you're watching a lot of the content from on YouTube. And it, I would say, is a good thing to meet that person in real life so that you can just like realize they're a normal person and get over it like immediately. Because that was something that happened when I was when I first started event organizing, meeting famous people, when I was doing the whole student government thing, I realized, oh, these people are all just like normal people, you know? And it was like, kind of like when I'd been in the music scene, I'd already gotten a taste of that because I'd met lots of like artists and bands and stuff like that. And I'd been like, oh, okay, they're just whatever. After you party with a couple of your favorite bands, it's like, whatever. It's really not a big deal anymore. And so that was definitely the experience with event organizing as well. And so I kind of figured that it would be the case when I actually organized to bring the different kinds of people that I ended up bringing. So, I mean, the only person that turned out to be a friend was this one right here, Dangerous Maybe. That's Michael Downs. He's got a blog. You should check out his blog, The Dangerous Maybe. Sure, he's got a couple of old YouTube videos up on, but they're not really... his best content is his blog content. I mean, I do wish he'd make more videos, but he doesn't want to. It's fine. But you can still go watch these 2 videos. They're so great. They're on Loncar. But I mean, they're really just kind of like scraping the very surface. He goes a lot deeper with his blog posts, and he does a really good job of making those very accessible and everything like that. And so that's why we brought him to talk about Baudrillard and consumerism. He was on social media. I was seeing him post about things that were very interesting and sort of related to the stuff that we were talking about, like in one of these philosophy and theory groups that I was a part of. And so we thought, let's use school funding to bring him. So how do you do that, plebe, you ask? Well, it's actually quite simple, but at the same time, excruciating and obnoxious, depending on your personality type. Now, my experience is when it comes to philosophy and theory or towards, I mean, just really kind of like activism, either one. Those are 2 separate worlds, but either one, you don't really, neither one really attracts people who are usually really dependable, sort of like accountant-brained types of paperwork, plugging bureaucratic personality type people. You attract people who are more just like, they're usually pretty individualistic. They're usually pretty in their own heads. They're usually, there for their own kinds of reasons. They usually stop coming to groups the moment they find someone that they start dating, or they just like, they come to a couple of meetings and then they fizzle out because they get too busy with their classes. Time energy is a huge issue, obviously. And the fact that people have to usually work while they're going through school, that's another thing. But then you also just have people who like to be like house cats and never go out. And that's a bigger and bigger problem all the time. So students in a lot of ways are the most counter-revolutionary types of people, even though they're very angsty. So they have a lot of the rhetoric, but they usually don't have like any sort of dependability or follow through. And so that was like a constant frustration for me and a lot of people who I knew who were like doing any kind of organizing stuff. And so really, if you want to bring someone who you want to introduce other people to, or if you just want to meet somebody and give them some money so that they can like, fly to another state and hang out and get some good food and like, check out the area. If you just want to like network with people that you are inspired from, who you learn from, then this is what you'll have to do. Don't rely on other people. That's the first part. You really want to keep a really tight running ship and operation. Like, you don't want to have like 10 people in the planning process. You don't want to have 20 people in the planning process. The smaller is the better, right? That's why the philosophy club at Boise State is the speakers that get brought every year. There's 2 speakers that get brought every year. I brought like 6 speakers when I was president of that club, and most of the brunt of that work was not on my shoulders for that club, and that was a rarity. Usually it's not like that. Usually an established club, it's kind of on the shoulders of the organizers or the officers of that club. Unless you're like a really established fraternity or sorority, and that's like another thing altogether. They have like advisors who are paid to help them like organize events and stuff like that. It takes a lot of the like heavy lifting off of them, and it's actually a really obnoxious thing that they kind of just have the world like handed to them on this sort of silver platter, as long as they've got like daddy's and mommy's money to pay for their Greek life dues. Then they're able to just like have like this social life where they don't really have to do much more than show up and volunteer at this or that event. But for everybody else, usually you're screwed. But at the philosophy club at Boise State, one of the cool things was that there were a couple of professors who, because they really wanted to keep the club going, and it kept starting and then fizzling out because people come and go as they are, students don't stay long enough to by the time they learn what they're supposed to do, they already move on. And like handing on the torch of leadership is like a notoriously difficult problem. And so if you have advisors that are there who are trained, who are going to be able to help people, then that's awesome, and they'll help you navigate what I call the bureaucratic acrobatics. And so bureaucratic acrobatics is the paperwork. Really, it's almost all paperwork. If you can figure out how to navigate applications and do paperwork and just basic stuff like that, the world will open up to you in a lot of ways, because it is definitely biased towards that kind of accountant-minded, diligent, step-by-step, logistical kind of person, the kind of person who I was saying is not typically attracted to philosophy and theory, or on the other side, like activism. I mean, if you are that kind of person, though, and you're attracted to either of those two worlds, then there's going to be organizations probably already in existence that desperately need you. And if they aren't there, then you can always start one. But what I was saying, though, about the Philosophy Club at Boise State was that there was these two professors who were really helping organize things ahead of time. And so one of the things that they do is they'd be like, we bring 2 speakers per year, here you got to do this paperwork, you got to go do this paperwork by this date. And so they kind of give you assignments if you're one of the officers of the club, and they make sure that you're on top of things, so that by the time you want to bring somebody in, say, like September, October, November, well, you need to be working on that in June, July. Like you have to preferably like 6 to 9 months in advance, you have to be already emailing the professors that you want to bring. And so because students usually aren't thinking that far ahead, these advisors would be always bringing their friends from Notre Dame or what have you. And I found it obnoxious because I didn't like these speakers that they were bringing. They were literally just bringing their friends, or bringing people that they were trying to network with, because they're navigating the world of academic publishing and journals and all of this. And I just didn't care about all of that. I wanted to bring people that we liked. And there were people who were trying to navigate that world, thinking about becoming professional philosophers, and they were officers on the club. And so in the club. And so they were all about yeah, we want to bring those kinds of speakers, and I was always like, I don't care. We want to bring YouTubers, because we want to bring people who are actually speaking to normal people. We want to bring people who are getting people interested in philosophy. We want to bring people who are used to talking to people who aren't already interested in these things, so that when we organize this event and put posters up all over campus, it'll be an interesting topic and an interesting speaker that will bring a lot of interest from the broader public to what it is that we're doing. And that was always my mentality, and it was a big kind of tension. Anyway, so the thing that I really want to talk about here is that if you don't have advisors like that club did, who are going to kind of hold your hand through the process, and it's going to be a really uphill battle to figure it all out. And there are resources at most of these higher learning institutions that I would recommend looking into. So, for instance, the student government is usually where you're going to get your money from, if not from your department. So if you are in a philosophy or sociology department, for instance, well, really anything that you want to, if you're in a physics department, you want to bring a physicist to talk, great. Well, your department might have money for that, and your department might have a club for that. But if it doesn't, and if you don't, then the student government is usually a place that you can go to, because they usually have funding available. And that funding that is available is not something that you should feel guilty for using, because it's your tuition. It's everyone's tuition. There are a lot of people who are interested in the things that you're interested in. If you don't organize things with that funding to bring things for those kinds of people that would be interested in those kinds of things, then all of the funding is going to get used up by fraternities that want to go have big, really expensive events where they're just paying for services, basically. And it's I don't know, that's fine. I don't hate Greek life like some people do. I don't hate Greek life as much as I used to. But at the time, I remember just being wow, a lot of money is going to some pointless events, it looks like. And it's just really just these professional managerial training ground, breeding ground types of socials. And I just was like, I found it like repugnant and annoying at the time. And, that's how I felt about like the whole sports scene at the university as well. Nothing against sports. I just don't like how it becomes like the prime emphasis in the neoliberal university. But anyway, so all I'm saying is that this is money that is going to be used up for other purposes. There are always people putting in requests for that money. Sometimes really good, organizations are going to ask for money in October and get rejected because the money's already gone. The money's going to be gone no matter what. And it's going to be gone by October no matter what. So you might have really awesome organizations that apply to get that money, but it's gone by October. So you have to be applying for it in June or July or August. Okay. August at the latest. But there's a few things that you have to think about when you're thinking about the bureaucratic acrobatics. And, here they are. You need to have a club to be able to do it through student government. Like, usually this is true. Like, you obviously have to look into your own funding board rules at your own student government, wherever it is that you're going to go to college. And by the way, all of this is obviously just assuming an audience of people who are going to college. I know most of the people on my channel aren't going to college, but some of you are. And for those of you who are, I don't think that college is necessary for success in life. I don't think it's necessary to be smart. I don't think it's necessary for anything. But at the same time, I mean, unless it's like a career specific thing, or unless you want to spend a lot of time sitting with people who've mastered this or that topic, like in that case, then yeah, it's necessary. But if you've got like parents who want you to do it and they're going to pay for it, or if you are willing to take that debt on for yourself, or whatever, if you're already going to be doing it anyway, then I think that you should probably make the most out of it. That's what I'm saying. So anyway, carrying on. So yeah, look at the specifics of your funding board request stuff. Okay. And, I'll just show you what we have at what we had at Boise State. Now, I also went to North Idaho College, and we're not going to bother talking about it. It's similar enough. I that's what I learned is like these two. One is a 2-year institution, one is a 4-year institution. Both of them, they're like 8 hours driving distance away from one another, maybe 6 hours. I don't fucking know. But the point being is like they're very different institutions, but they had very similar funding board, student government related stuff. And so I just kind of want to give you like a general taste for what it's like. If you're going to Reed University or Harvard University or just some state university like I did, then you're going to have similar resources. And I'll talk about like the more expensive kinds of speakers. Like if you wanted to bring Cornell West, it'd cost you like 15 grand minimum. If you wanted to bring Peterson, it would probably cost you like 50 grand. So that should give you a kind of idea. Like some people are really expensive and you're not gonna be able to bring them with the student funding. But as far as like bringing a smaller YouTuber like myself or like Epoch Philosophy, or I mean, I brought Peter Coffin to campus. Like to bring a smaller YouTuber, you only really need probably between like $1,200 to $2,500, and that's not just to pay for their flight. That's not just to pay for their hotel. It's also an honorarium. And the idea of an honorarium is that you're not paying them like for a service. You're just kind of giving them something as like a sort of token of like honor, appreciation, prestige. It's like this old sort of aristocratic idea. But you're not paying them for their service, right? Like you're really just giving them like this gift. And so like when Richard Wolff came, like he doesn't normally go to places and speak for like less than Cornell West does probably, but because we were a bunch of broke students in one lowly little club, he was like, yeah, I'll do it, mainly to prove a point because Peterson wouldn't do it, and he was debating Peterson in lieu of a debate, and that was like the whole point of the stunt. If you don't know about that, go watch the video. The video is on the New Symbolization Project Catch YouTube channel. You can check it out like right here. Actually, yeah, I'm gonna play this for you all. Here we go.
There were 2 posters advertising this event. I wonder if you only saw one of them came. The first one was responding to Jordan Peterson in lieu of a debate with Richard Wolff. The other one was what every responsible citizen needs to know about capitalism, because it's the same thing. Please welcome Richard Wolff.
Thank you all for coming, although I came further than you did. I came on the airplane today from New York City, and my head is still bouncing around.
Pretty awesome stuff. And I don't know if you saw how fucking awesome I look in a dress, but Yeah, that was a really cool event, and he came at a fraction of the cost and was a total boss for doing that. Really appreciated Dr. Wolf for doing that at such a reduced cost. So I mean, the thing is like most of the time you're not going to get someone of his stature to come for cheap, but if you can, then great. But what I was saying is that I think that YouTubers generally aren't invited places. Like when Natalie Wynn of ContraPoints gave a talk in Portland, Oregon, like a few years ago. I forget, it was like this one fest. That was someone reached out to her and said, hey, we would pay you to come. And she said, sure. And then she came and she talked. And if you think that brought some good to the world, then there you go. Do that. You can do it yourself. And that was obviously before she was as big as she got. It was part of the reason she got bigger was that kind of thing, is that, almost all of the YouTubers that you might watch who are big ultimately end up doing stuff like that, doing events like that. And you can usually find them giving a talk at some place because some student like yourself was like, hey, I like this person. I want to meet this person. I want other people I know to be exposed to this person. I can make it happen. And so they either joined a club that was already existing and they pushed to have the person brought, and they got involved and took on responsibilities to bring that person, or they went through the process of kind of what I'm going to tell you how to do is, if there's not a currently existing club that would want to bring the kind of person that you want to bring, or if it would be too much of a hassle for whatever reason, all you need is like 3 people to start a club. Okay, so if you've got a couple of friends, it's all it really takes. And so you can form a club, let's just say that it's spring, and you want to bring somebody in the fall. Well, form a club as quick as you can, because the paperwork turnaround process, first you got to get the get the paperwork in there. You're going to have a mission for your club. You have to have a name for your club, a picture for your club. You got to have like, you probably need like 12 signatures and emails from people who are like interested in the club or something like that. That's pretty easy to get. You just got to go around and have some people in your classes like sign something. But as far as like actually getting official, you're going to need at least a president and a treasurer usually, but also probably a vice president, maybe a secretary, depending on your own student government and its rules. Okay, once you have the club formed, then you go you go through this whole process of asking for money. So as you see here, there's types of sponsorship at ASBSU. One is for direct. They can give you a grant of $4,000 is like the maximum you can get in the year. You could get you could get this in 4 installations, $1,000 for 4 different events for 4 different speakers. But the thing is that you have to. It's not always easy to sell the funding board on an event, and so you kind of can't make it too complicated. That was one of the big problems for me, was I was always like, here's why we want to do this, and it was always like this big brain shit that really, like, at the end of the day, you just be like, people love philosophy and we want to bring a philosopher, and the thing is, they're going to be like, well, what do you want this philosopher to talk about, and like, who's this philosopher going to be? And if you're talking to like multiple people and you haven't even nailed down the topic yet, you might keep putting off doing the paperwork for the funding request. But the thing is like, you can be somewhat vague before the funding board meeting. So just get the funding request in as fast as you can, because you want to be closer to the front of the line. Like I said, if you're not in the funding board meetings that happen before October, you're probably getting rejected because there won't be any funding left. And all the fraternities will have already used it because they have advisors who are thinking ahead throughout the entire year, and they'll literally use up money. They'll have claim to the whole pot of money before October's over, but they're literally planning events for next spring. So like, that's how far ahead they're thinking. It's a lot harder to be thinking that far ahead when you don't have the experience, when you're just a lowly student, and you don't have the advisors kind of holding your hand. But what I'm saying is, as long as you actually get started, you get out there in spring, or like right now, what is it? It's like July 17th. It's not too late. You can form a club and if you got the paperwork in there fast enough, in the first month probably, and then you could get the funding request in there, and you just, when it comes to the budget for the funding request, like there's all these extra things like food, like they want to know how many people do you think are going to be in attendance, and if you're going to have food, then that would be extra money, and you're going to have to go through probably Aramark, because Aramark is in all the prisons and hospitals and universities in the United States, and they're a giant monopoly that serves actually god-awful food. And if you want to go off campus and bring in like some kind of an ethnic food, like locally made ethnic food, like it's going to actually cost you like a lot more. There's going to be all this extra paperwork. Or if you want to like, bring some like appetizers from a local grocery store, then you might be able to like fill out some paperwork to get a credit card and do all of that stuff. But that's a lot of complications, and ultimately you don't need to do it. If you do it, great. I've done it. It's a headache. It's totally worth it in certain cases. And if you got other people on board who are following through on getting things done, then great. But at the end of the day, there's the things that need to happen, and there's the things that are nice if they happen. And let's just focus on the things that need to happen. The things that need to happen is you need to email the people that you're interested in bringing to campus, see if they'd be available somewhere in some kind of a time frame, and just be like, hey, what are you interested in talking about? What do you want to talk about? Here's some things we're interested in. And then there you go. Like, get that conversation going with them. And if they're too busy, they'll at least be honored that you reached out. If they're not too busy, then this can be a good way for them to make some extra money, get out of wherever they're at, go on a quick little vacation, and have the honor of like speaking on like some campus somewhere. And that's really cool. And you could always do kind of stuff like what we did with the New Civilization Project, which was really just like a small, like really, really, really small club. And the whole point of the club was really just so that we could like do a conference or bring a few other speakers, and it was really just so that we could do like a sort of like, it was just fun, it was just a way to like mix things up. And but what we did though, what I was saying that you could do is you can bring speakers, and you can if they're fine with it, you can record it, and then you can, like, here we brought Peter Rollins. Peter Rollins is an awesome guy.
I stop. I'm kind of like bring us in the wrong direction.
And we you don't have to let that event happen and then disappear into the like it never happened, right? As long as they give you permission, then you can film it and then you can put it online. And for the love of God, please don't just use your camera far away and have all this terrible audio like people always do. Have somebody put their phone on airplane mode so it doesn't interrupt the speaking event, and then start a recording app, and then put that on the table where they're talking, on the podium where they're talking. And the microphone quality on that will be better than probably anything else, honestly. And then that will be great, because you take that audio file, you take the video file, you combine those two things, you can sync those things on Premiere, and it's really easy to look up how to be able to do that. But there's also other ways that you can do that. You don't have to use Premiere, because Premiere is like costs a lot of money and it's proprietary bullshit. But whatever it is that you use, you make a video file, upload it, and then there you go. You've officially democratized knowledge. You're helping people who are working class and not able to go to the university have access to something that they wouldn't have had access to otherwise, and you're not hoarding it and then keeping it just in your memories alone. And I'm a huge advocate of that. Okay. And so I guess like that's pretty much like the bureaucratic acrobatics is like the biggest headache of it all. It really helps to have somebody who knows what they're doing, who's able to kind of make these things happen. With $4,000, I'd bring 2 speakers. Unless like if it's really like you're bringing a friend who did a couple of YouTube videos, like you can probably get away with like, hey, we'll pay for your flight and your hotel, and maybe like an extra $100, and then you could bring a few people like that. That'd be cool. But if we're talking like someone who is really busy, and they're kind of coming for like 3 or 4 days, you probably want to pay them like a couple grand. It's not just that you're paying them to be there. You're also paying them to plan their whole life around that. And it can be quite the headache for the speaker, but it's also an honor, and people love to do it. I love to do it. I've spoken at like 10 universities, at conferences, at special speaking events, at private and public events. And so it's great. If you want to bring me, bring me. Shoot me an email, theoryplebe@gmail.com. And if you need any like extra like help, like, oh, how would I do this? Well, if you're bringing me, I'd definitely like give you some advice. You could bring me just to talk about the philosophy of organizing, and then I will like literally like give your club everything it needs so that you can bring like someone who is an actual influencer. I don't consider myself to be an influencer anymore. I've left Patreon. I've left the influencer sphere. But nevertheless, it's important work. And if you wanted to bring someone who's a bigger deal, I could coach you on how to do that and everything like that. And we could record the whole thing so that you're able to like train up like the next, the new leaders who are going to be coming into the organization. Like that's all possible. But yeah, 4,000 is enough to bring a couple of speakers for sure. But also there's like joint endeavors. So let's just say that you're in a philosophy club, but then you want to bring something that's more related to political theory. And the philosophy club people are like, no, we already have our $4,000 spoken for. We only get $4,000 a year. And we are already bringing these two speakers. And you go, well, the thing is, most clubs don't do joint requests because that's more of it's like, it just extra paperwork. It takes knowing other people who do other things or have other interests. Most people don't. And so with the way that the joint request works is your club, if your $4,000 is already spoken for, you've already planned your events with that money, guess what? There's $6,000 that is available to you as long as you have another club that you are able to do something with. So you're part of this philosophy club. Start another club with 3 friends. You see where I'm going? And then you just are able to ask for $6,000. And we did this. We ended up using a full $10,000 for the Responding to Jordan Peterson conference that was just all for fun and memes. And we were able to bring like smaller people for like $500, like Doug Lane. We were able to bring bigger people like Richard Wolff. Now, we needed some extra money when we realized we were going to be bringing Wolf. We needed a few $1,000 extra. And so what we ended, I literally just like said, we're doing this really cool event, and it's related to public service. And so I sent the School of Public Service like an email saying, do you have any funding that you could like send our way? And I sent that kind of email to the sociology department, to the School of Public Service, to the College of Innovation and Design, to the School of so there's basically like there's schools, and then within the school there's the different departments. The school itself has funding that they can give you, and then the different departments have funding that they can give you, and then there's also people like the dean, or like the dean of the honors college, or the dean of and so you can email all these people. And it's kind of like when you're a kid and you can't get what you want from dad, so you go, Mom, can I get that? Or vice versa. Well, when you're trying to get funding, just go to everybody. And then literally just be like, hey, we need like $1,500 to make this happen. And then they send it to you. And then you end up getting it from multiple people. And you're like, ha, we can bring more people on board. Wow, this is going to be a great thing. Now we've got this extra money. It doesn't usually work that way, but it can. Also, the individual grants, that's so that you can go to a conference. I like that. Gosh, I really miss being able to be like, oh, wow, look at that conference that's happening in Pittsburgh. I want to go. Oh, wow, look at that conference that's happening in Argentina. I want to go. Give me money, ASBSU, so you can fill out a thing. And then you go in there, and then they say, they give you an appointment. So for all 3 of these kinds of requests, they're going to give you an appointment with the funding board. You go in there, look professional, and just have like the basic common courtesy of being on time and knowing what you're talking about, like knowing like how much money it's going to cost to get the person there, and give them a little bit more than it costs for them to like do the hotel and everything. And by the way, you don't have to worry about paying them in advance. You don't have to worry about paying for their hotels. You're just like, the university is going to cut the speaker a check, and they pay for everything out of pocket. Like the speaker pays for everything out of pocket, and then they just give that person a check. So it's really nice. The bureaucratic acrobatics can be a little weird. Like sometimes you need like them, well, depending on the department, or depending on depending on the rules of the place, the institution that you're at, there might be like this, oh, you need to use blue ink. Like it was a big fiasco with Michael Downs from The Dangerous Maybe, getting him there, because it was like he doesn't have a fax machine and he doesn't know how to do these things. And so he ended up having to go to a place and like use someone's machine and all this stuff. And then he had to do it all over again because he'd done it with a black and white printer. And so the blue ink wasn't showing. It's such a ridiculous, like, there's just so much extra BS that creeps into any form of bureaucracy, but like especially those kinds. All right. Anyway, so individual grants. Yeah, you can use individual grants to go places and do stuff. But joint grants, you can get extra money that's not available to your club by doing it with another club. And for direct grants, all you need is like a 3-person club for real. And so I hope that's helpful. This is obviously not a very polished video. I didn't really think ahead of like what I was gonna say very much. I'm about to go back to work, so I mean it's all very improv. I just wanted to put all this stuff out there, and so if you're interested in doing this kind of stuff, if there's some big hole in what I've said, if there's something that I've left out, please ask in the comments below, and I'll be sure to either answer you there or like maybe do a more polished video that kind of goes into some of the more like specifics later. I just wanted to get people thinking. It is July right now. Yeah, I mean, bring somebody. Look, there's all these people who you wish that you could be like a Patreon subscriber to. Those people, like, you don't always have the money to do that, or to do that for very long. Being able to cut them like a $2,000 check, that feels really good. Like, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. And then it puts you on a first name basis with that person. Sometimes you realize that this person who you thought was fucking awesome is like just a normal person, and maybe not a normal person that you get along with. It's kind of like dating someone long distance. Like, then you actually start dating, like, the person moves, and then you're like, oh, I like you, but you're different than I thought, you know? It's the same thing with like, there's just something about like online people, like, and I'm speaking from experience. I've done long distance relationships before. And I've also like been like, wow, I'm kind of idolizing this person. And then I meet them and I'm like, I mean, they do cool content, but like, you know, and the whole thing is like, prepare yourself for that. Like, prepare to like, be like, oh, they're a normal person. And then don't go from like, don't go from loving to hating when they're just a normal person. Like, try to prepare yourself for the fact that like, oh, there was like a fantasy in my head. And it's just really good. Like, I feel like nothing's been better for me than like that experience of actually like meeting people that I looked up to on a ton of different times, and then just being like, a person. What do you know? They're not going to be your friend, and they're not necessarily going to be in your network. But there's something just in terms of your own development, your own maturity, that comes with just realizing how different things actually are. It's kind of like traveling, like going to another country. Like it's you don't know till you know. So I hope that was helpful to you all. I hope that you find inspiration in this somehow, and I hope that you will, if you don't start organizing events and getting people there, then that you'll at least support the people who do. And if you ever volunteer to help someone who is, that you will follow through, because if you don't, you're a reprehensible fucking piece of shit. I'm joking, but I'm also like, don't be, I mean, it's kind of, it's ruder than rude. Okay. There's a lot of really nice people who are like flakes, and it's like, you're not nice if you flake. All right. So don't try to help an organizer and then flake out. And if you're the organizer, like, look, just keep an operation as small as possible. Don't have like a big Slack with a lot of people in it. Like if there's let's say that you're in a group of like 15 people, like you've got a YDSA group at a campus somewhere, and you got like 15 to 50 people. You need to have an organizing committee that is very fucking small. You don't want to have involvement from people whose skin is not in the game, who are not actually like lifting a finger. Like, look, if they're too busy, then awesome. But like at the general committee meetings or at the general assembly meetings or whatever it's called, like, you get a small task force together. You get in advance like the approval to be able to basically do whatever you need to do to pull the event off within reason, and you get that, and so you can run with it. Because look, I really want to actually stress this point before letting you all go. It's important. There's a kind of like unilateral power or like decision-making ability that organizers need to be licensed from the larger group. And here's why. Like it's if every decision that they do is getting flack from people who aren't actually doing anything, it's going to breed like all kinds of resentment in the first place. But more importantly, because really there's two kinds of work. There's people who do things. There's people who watch people do things, right? And so because the university is a breeding ground for professional managerial class people, there's a lot of people who really like to watch other people do things and nitpick it, but like they don't like to do things themselves, and it's fucking obnoxious. Just don't go there if you can possibly help it. But if you're there, take advantage of like the resources that are available and make the most of it, is what I'm trying to say. So anyway, but if you are having to, let's just say that you're planning something out. You're forming the group that's going to put the paperwork through for the funding requests and the travel requests or whatever kinds of paperwork acrobatics you're gonna have to, like the hoops you're gonna have to jump through. Well, you're doing that like months in advance. The biggest problem is when you have the energy and the willpower to make it happen, you're going to put the paperwork through, and then it will be gone for weeks and you're going to forget about it. And then you finally get an email back from the office of the student government, and they're like, okay, here's something that you messed up. Now you have to fix it. And now it's going to take another 2 weeks because you get that fixed. And sometimes you got to do a follow-up email and be like, hey, did anybody get this? Like, and they're like, oh, we lost that in the paperwork. So it's like, there's these things that complicate it, and then there's actually getting the hearing and going to it and like presenting your case for like why you need this money, and so the whole way through that, it can be really obnoxious if every step of the way, every time there's a question, every time the small planning committee isn't sure about something, you have to take it back to the bigger group that only meets once a month. See, because now you're stuck between this student government entity. Sometimes there's like 3 people involved with emails that you need to talk to, and now there's like the General Assembly of people, and it's just like, look, whatever you end up doing, just make sure that you're able to make it happen. And if that requires going and starting a different club, just so you can actually get it done, like go do it. Because what most people end up doing is sitting on committees and nothing ever happens. I promise you that. That is the overwhelming experience of anybody who tries to do anything at university campuses. Is you try and you end up just sitting in a lot of meetings, nothing ever happens, and it's because by the time people have responded to their emails, it's the end of the semester, and then people are on with their break, and then half the people have graduated, and then it just it falls apart. So keep that in mind going in. And best of luck to you.